What if the most decisive battles of World War II weren't won by soldiers, but by a dead man, a rubber tank, and a mountain of carrots in the grand blood-soaked tapestry of the Second World War? The most lethal weapons were not always forged in steel or fueled by cordite, while the roar of heavy artillery and the thunder of panzer divisions dominated the headlines. A far more subtle war was being waged in the flickering shadows of intelligence offices and the creative minds of artists. This was a conflict where a well-placed lie was more devastating than a 1,000-pound bomb, and where the course of human history was redirected by the art of the impossible. The Allies understood a fundamental truth. They could not always outgun the industrial might of the Third Reich. So they chose to outthink them. They turned the battlefield into a stage and the enemy high command into an unwitting audience. We are about to pull back the curtain on 5 instances where the world's most powerful military machine was brought to its knees, not by bullets, but by the sheer audacity of deception. Our first descent into this world of smoke and mirrors begins with a corpse. By early 1943, the soft underbelly of Europe lay exposed, and the Allies set their sights on Sicily as the gateway to the liberation of Italy. The strategic importance of the island was no secret. Hitler and his generals were already bracing for the impact. To divert the Nazi gaze, British intelligence orchestrated a scheme so macabre and so intricate it bordered on the surreal. They called it Operation Mincemeat. The plan centered on Glyndor Michael, a destitute man who had passed away in London unknown and unmourned. In death, however, he was granted a new identity. Major William Martin of the Royal Marines, clad in a meticulous uniform and carrying personal letters from a fictional fiancé, the body was equipped with a briefcase chained to its wrist containing top secret, yet entirely fraudulent, plans for an invasion of Greece and Sardinia. When the body was slipped into the freezing currents off the coast of Spain, the clock began to tick, as the British had gambled. Spanish authorities recovered the major, and the documents found their way directly into the hands of the Abwehr. The deception was absolute. Hitler, convinced of the documents' authenticity, diverted an entire armored division to Greece, leaving Sicily's defenses critically thin. When the real invasion fleet appeared on the Sicilian horizon, the German response was fractured and late. All because they had put their faith in a dead man's lies. As the war progressed toward the inevitable storming of Fortress Europe, the scale of deception reached theatrical proportions. In the months leading up to D-Day in 1944, the Allies faced the monumental task of hiding a 1,000,000-man army. This gave birth to the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, a unit better known to history as the Ghost Army. These were not traditional soldiers, but a collection of 100 painters, actors, set designers, and sound engineers. Their arsenal consisted of inflatable rubber tanks, wooden airplanes, and massive speakers capable of projecting the mechanical symphony of an armored column across 15 miles of countryside. They were tasked with creating a phantom force, the 1st United States Army Group. Positioned directly across the English Channel from Pas de Calais, from the air, German reconnaissance planes photographed what appeared to be a massive buildup of armor and supplies. On the ground, the Ghost Army moved their rubber decoys under the cover of night, using heaters to create thermal signatures and broadcasting fake radio traffic to saturate the airwaves. The performance was so convincing that even after the first Allied boots hit the sand at Normandy, Hitler remained paralyzed. He was certain that Normandy was a mere feint and that the real blow would come at Pas de Calais. He held back his elite panzer reserves for 2 days. 2 days that allowed the Allied beachhead to solidify and ultimately doomed the German occupation of France. Sometimes, however, the most effective lies are those that explain away the impossible. During the height of the Battle of Britain, the Royal Air Force began achieving an uncanny success rate in intercepting German bombers during the pitch-black hours of the night. The secret was a technological marvel, airborne interception radar. But the British knew that if the Germans suspected the existence of such technology, they would immediately work on countermeasures. To protect the secret, the British Ministry of Information launched one of the most enduring myths of the 20th century. They began leaking stories to the press, claiming that British pilots were being fed massive quantities of carrots, which granted them superhuman night vision. The propaganda was relentless, featuring posters and testimonials about the nutritional wonders of the root vegetable. The ruse worked on 2 levels. It encouraged a starving domestic population to grow and eat more vegetables, and it sent German scientists down a rabbit hole of nutritional research. While the Luftwaffe spent months investigating the biological link between carotene and ocular acuity, the RAF continued to use their radar to sweep the night skies clean of invaders. While the European theater was a clash of massive armies, the Pacific War was a desperate struggle for survival across vast, unforgiving oceans. In 1942, following the crushing defeat at the Battle of the Java Sea, the Dutch minesweeper Ilm's Abraham Crinson found itself isolated in waters teeming with Japanese warships. It was slow, outgunned, and possessed no air cover. Escape seemed mathematically impossible. Yet the captain refused to surrender to the inevitable. He looked at the lush, volcanic islands dotting the horizon and saw a disguise. The crew anchored at a remote shoreline and spent days chopping down tropical foliage. Literally covering the entire ship in a canopy of trees and vines, they painted the hull to mimic the jagged gray rocks of the coastline. The ship became a floating island by day. They remained perfectly still near the shore, blending into the natural landscape while Japanese bombers roared overhead, seeing nothing but another uninhabited rock in the sea. By night, the island would weigh anchor and creep southward toward Australia. For 8 harrowing days, this piece of geography navigated the enemy's backyard, eventually reaching safety in a feat of camouflage that remains unparalleled in naval history. Finally, we turn to the scorched sands of North Africa, where the desert fox Erwin Rommel seemed invincible. Bernard Montgomery knew that to break the German line at El Alamein, he needed the element of surprise in a landscape that offered no place to hide. This was the impetus for Operation Bertram. The Allies turned to the art of visual distortion on a massive scale. They created Sunshield's lightweight wooden frames that, when placed over a heavy tank, made it look like a standard, harmless supply truck from the air. Conversely, they disguised thousands of real supply trucks to look like tanks in areas where no attack was planned. They even laid miles of fake water pipelines made from discarded fuel cans, moving them at a pace that suggested an attack was still weeks away. When the real assault began in the north, Rommel was caught in a state of total tactical disorientation. He had positioned his strength against a phantom threat in the south, leaving his flank vulnerable to a hammer blow that would mark the first major land victory for the Allies. These men did not just fight a war, they curated a reality that their enemies were forced to inhabit. But as the smoke cleared from the desert, a chilling realization began to settle over the high commands of the world. If an entire army can be made of rubber and a warship can disappear into a forest, one must wonder, what other truths of the Great War were merely carefully constructed illusions waiting to be unraveled? To find the answer, we must look to the most macabre deception of all, a plan that began not on a battlefield, but in the cold, dimly lit confines of a London morgue. This was Operation Mincemeat, a scheme so daring and so bizarre that it seemed pulled from the pages of a spy novel in 1943. As the Allies prepared to strike at the soft underbelly of Europe through Sicily, they faced a terrifying reality. Hitler had reinforced the island to the point of near impregnability. To save thousands of lives, the British intelligence services needed to convince the German High Command that the real target was Greece. They needed a messenger that the Nazis would trust implicitly, a messenger who could never be interrogated, and who would never betray the secret under torture. They needed a dead man. The man chosen for this grim task was Glinder Michael, a homeless man who had died in obscurity in the hands of the intelligence officers. He was transformed into Major William Martin of the Royal Marines. This was not merely a change of clothes, it was the meticulous construction of a human life. They filled his pockets with what they called pocket litter, the mundane artifacts of a living existence. There was a photograph of a fictional fiancée named Pam, a receipt for a new shirt, a letter from a worried father, and even stubs from a London theater performance. Chained to his wrist was a briefcase containing top-secret documents detailing a planned invasion of Greece and Sardinia. When his body was slipped into the icy waters off the coast of Spain, the Allies held their breath. They knew that Spanish authorities, though officially neutral, would likely pass the documents to the Abwehr, the German military intelligence. The gamble paid off with chilling precision. The documents reached Hitler's desk, and the Führer, captivated by the apparent authenticity of the Major's personal effects, overruled his own generals. He redirected an entire panzer division to Greece, leaving Sicily's back door wide open when the Allied fleet finally appeared on the Sicilian horizon. The German defenses were a hollow shell of what they should have been. It was a victory bought with the identity of a man who, in death, achieved a glory he never knew in life, proving that in the theater of war, even a ghost can turn the tide of history. But while one branch of intelligence worked with the dead, another was busy conjuring an entire army out of thin air, as the calendar turned to 1944. The focus shifted to the coast of France for Operation Overlord. To protect the landings at Normandy, the Allies launched Operation Fortitude, creating the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops better known to history as the Ghost Army. This was a unit comprised not of career soldiers but of artists, illustrators, and sound engineers recruited from New York and Philadelphia's elite art schools. Their weapons were not steel and lead, but rubber, silk, and recorded sound. Across the channel from Pas de Calais, they deployed over 1,000 inflatable tanks and wooden airplanes, meticulously painted to look like a massive invasion force under the command of General George S. Patton. From the air, German reconnaissance planes saw a terrifying concentration of armor, yet on the ground, a single soldier could lift a 4-ton tank over his head with one hand. To complete the illusion, the Ghost Army used massive loudspeakers mounted on trucks to broadcast the grinding gears and clatter of tanks moving through the night noises that could be heard 15 miles away. They created fake radio networks, where operators mimicked the unique typing styles of real units to trick German eavesdroppers. The deception was so effective that Hitler remained convinced for weeks that the Normandy landings were merely a diversion, holding back his most powerful reserves to defend against a phantom army that didn't exist. The Ghost Army had successfully fought a battle using nothing but the enemy's own fear and imagination. While these grand illusions moved divisions, other deceptions were woven into the very fabric of daily life, hiding the secrets of a technological revolution. During the darkest days of the Battle of Britain, the Royal Air Force was achieving the impossible, shooting down German bombers in the pitch-black void of the night sky. The secret was the cavity magnetron, a breakthrough in radar technology that allowed for airborne interception. But the British knew that if the Germans realized radar had been miniaturized enough to fit inside a fighter plane, they would immediately develop countermeasures. The solution was a stroke of propaganda genius that survives as an urban legend to this day. The British Ministry of Information began leaking stories to the press, claiming that their pilots had developed superhuman night vision. The secret, they claimed, was a diet rich in carrots. They published posters and newsreels showing pilots like John Cat's Eyes Cunningham, crediting his success to the vegetable's high vitamin A content. The myth was so pervasive that it wasn't just the Germans who believed it. The British public began eating massive amounts of carrots to help them navigate the blackouts of London. The German military spent precious time and resources investigating the nutritional benefits of the vegetable, never suspecting that the true eye in the sky was a sophisticated electronic pulse. It was a masterclass in hiding a scientific miracle behind a humble garden vegetable. These stories remind us that the greatest weapon in any conflict is the human mind, from a corpse carrying fake letters to an army made of rubber and a technological secret hidden behind a carrot. The architects of these deceptions understood a fundamental truth. If you can control what the enemy sees, you can control what they do. They turned the fog of war into a canvas, painting a reality that led their adversaries into traps of their own making. These were the illusionists of the front lines, the men and women who realized that a well-placed lie could be more devastating than a 1,000-pound bomb. As we look back at these 5 incredible feats of military trickery, we see a side of World War I that is often overshadowed by the sheer scale of the fighting. It was a war of wits, a global game of chess where the stakes were the survival of civilization itself. Which of these 5 military deceptions blew your mind the most? Was it the macabre journey of Major Martin, or perhaps the sheer audacity of the Ghost Army? Let us know in the comments below. We love hearing your perspectives on these hidden chapters of history. If you found these stories as fascinating as we did, make sure to hit that like button to support the channel. It helps us continue to bring these epic tales of strategy and survival to light. And if you haven't already, subscribe to History's Secrets and ring the bell icon so you never miss a deep dive into the tactical genius and forgotten mysteries of the past. There are countless more stories waiting to be told. From the shadows of the Secret Service to the heart of the world's most famous battlefields. Until next time, keep questioning the world around you. Stay vigilant and stay curious. History is rarely as simple as it seems on the surface.